Hello, my name is Mitchell Barron, and I'll be going over board training for the Autism Tree Project Board of Directors. This is the table of contents. This is what we'll be covering. What's a nonprofit? 501c3. What is that? What's so important about that? The governing documents for a 501c3. And most importantly, things that we need to be aware about, especially you as board of directors, which is losing that tax exempt status and why it's so important. So, what is a nonprofit? Right? Well, it is, how do I say this? I put it right here, no private inurement. And it exists for public benefit. Obviously, there are other types of nonprofits, and we can go into them, but that's not your well, nonprofit, or it is a 501c3. That's the most important one, I would say. Only because you could see listed below that the benefits is that it has a tax exempt status, and it's only given to that because the courts would view, well, it's a privilege because nonprofits reduce government burden and whoever donates to this nonprofit, you get tax deductions. That's another reason why that people like nonprofits, people can donate to those nonprofits and everything. Obviously, that's the biggest role of society is filling in, and especially for these nonprofits, it's filling in a specific purpose that the government cannot adhere to, and that is for you guys autism research, screening, general programs to make people feel more belonged and providing that foundation, that community for autistic people and developing them into fully functioning adults. So, most important one, 501c3. Don't rem not don't remember that. Remember that. So, what are these governing documents? So, you can find these online, and probably the most important ones is I see that you guys have your annual report, Autism Tree Foundation annual report. This one was in 2018. Really like the cover of it, and it shows just exactly what you guys are doing, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be. And that includes into the 990. Well, it's not included, but it plays a heavy role into making sure that you still keep your tax exempt status. Obviously, the summary is right there, but it's a 34-page document that needs to be filled out thoroughly and make sure, I guess you could say, uh, it's to stress. You don't want that poorly drafted documents and losing that exemption. So as much information as you can inside here, and that's the best part about it. I put below, failure to file the Form 990 3 years in a row will cause a loss. I mean, that's just understandable. The IRS needs to know what you are doing. There are other governing documents as well, incorporating the Articles of Incorporation, which I would say is your peanut butter, and then the bylaws of your foundation, which I would say the jam is, and then the IRS recognition letter, which is, I would say, the holy grail of letting you know that, oh, this is official proof that grants or official proof for grants and donor deductions, which is incredibly important. Um, Obviously, the 990, what I want you to think about is transparency and accountability. That's what I want you to think about this. Obviously, it's a public document. You can find this online, and usually journalists or watchdogs will use it. And it discloses a lot of things, specifically it's money, very important. Any sort of how it's governing itself in general, and then the overall program impact in the community to make sure that it is doing its job for the betterment of the community. Next, risk. risking the loss of tax exempt status. So there's a lot of things that are incorporated into this. The first ones that I'll be going over is unrelated business tax income. When I want you to think about this, it's a general trade, um, and I guess you could say debt finance property um, can create UBIT liability, and it's practically making sure that it's not taking stuff from the market. So things that are exempt is like a volunteer run, donated goods, or convenience activities often exempt. And um, like I said, the purpose of UBIT is to prevent unfair competition for the for-profits. You don't want to take those market segments away. It's supposed to go for a niche, community-driven public charity. And if you're competing against stuff inside the private market, then that's bad. Political campaigns. Um, really easily, you can't do anything with political campaigns. Um, yeah, obviously, um, I think what is permitted specifically is nonpartisan education on political campaigns and then neutral forums. But you really shouldn't go into that. I would avoid it completely to make sure that you don't have to really bother with it because you can get into some hot mess real quick. Um, the book that I've been reading, it says I guess you could say it's Hopkins. It's a very, very niche book. But it even says even indirect political involvement can violate rules. So that's something, that's why I'm saying just avoid this completely because you don't want to lose that tax exempt status. And then, yeah, obviously endorsements are a no-go. You can learn that on the IRS video which I'll link at the end. Yeah, endorsements are a no-go, any sort of contributions. So no-go on political campaigns. That's what I want you to do. And no competing against private foundations. Next, charitable gaming. What is charitable gaming? Well, this could be bingos, raffles, any sort of, I would say gambling, but no, you're having games for fun. And obviously raffles are an incredibly huge part of it. And we'll go into that over later because I know that you hold out raffles at your um, I guess you could say community dinners or events. So that's stuff that we will go over in the future. But mostly it just needs to follow state laws and the IRS needs to know about it, just general record keeping on it. The book says, so other additional information is that gaming can trigger UBIT in general if it's not volunteer run. So that makes sense if you're paying someone else to hold it. And that's just how it goes. But I mean, it gets a lot more complicated after that. But just be aware about that. The next is in the IRS videos. Um, gaming like winnings, you need to record that. Um, I would say it depends, but for the most part, recording is always just better. And making sure that there's full transparency and accountability. Next would be employment issues. Only because of how labor laws work and volunteering. Obviously, nonprofits have to do full of volunteering, but I know that you have a director there that is paid. So making sure that those donations, I guess you could say, you're not breaking labor laws and minimum wage laws. You need to make sure that it's, how would I say, um, misclassifying employees, I guess you say, especially as contractors, which is common. And then obviously payroll taxes still apply. Um, but nonprofits are employers like a business. They can be. So just be aware about that, but it does have to be fully funded by donations. Like I said, private interment, no insider benefits from nonprofit resources. Look at like it's pretty self-explanatory. You don't use the resources from the Autism Tree Foundation for your private benefit, and you're not paying yourselves out. That's just plain and simple. I know you guys have more. Well, I mean, I understand that you guys found the foundation. That would be irreplaceable. But how would I say this? So yeah, so no excessive salaries for that director, paying obviously you don't want that. No sweetheart deals. Anything that literally specifically classifies as like benefit excessively. As for the insiders. Um, Next would be just going over deductions itself. Um, Only qualified organizations. Um, there's a lot to go into this, but receipts are always the best. That's what I want. Substantiations. That is the most important part. I gave a few other fun facts and details that I learned from the IRS certificate program, which is uh, if cash gifts are greater than $250, then it has to be written and acknowledged in order to make that deduction. And then non-cash gifts are greater than $500 um, require an IRS form. So whatever that be, property, all that whatnot. The IRS form is 8283. So just other things that you might need to educate on donors for deductions to make sure that, well, they're getting their deduction from your tax exempt status, and then also that you're, uh, well, getting that money. Um, but overall, for protecting your exemption, um, I would stress the vigilance on the 990, compliance with the IRS bans, and in general, just good governance to make sure that you stick to your mission, being credible and then sustainable as well. So, protecting the tax exempt status. And I'm going to try and tie this into Autism Tree. I know you guys do dinner parties. I know you guys do raffle. And obviously, I know that you have a director. So, how do I say this with examples, especially about dinner parties? Um, if a guest pays like $250 for a ticket and you receive a meal and maybe we'll go into the raffle area and maybe you get a few raffle tickets. And that meal is overall just generally worth $75 or let's say $50 to make it easier. The charity must disclose that for that fair market value, the FMV for short, of the benefit. Because if you don't provide the proper disclosure, penalties will be given from the IRS, and that is not good because that falls under, um, I guess you could say, it can also fall, yeah, donors may lose their deduction. That's pretty much it. Um, this also would go into UBIT, a dinner party. If the event includes like sales or activities, uh, not really related to, um, I guess you could say, the mission of the dinner party, so auctioning items that are not really like tied to a charitable purpose, then it may generate taxable income. So you got to disclose that as well. And then I think that's pretty much it for the dinner party. It's all that I can come up with my head right now. Um, but the Hopkins book, let's say, right. So like a nonprofit um, that hosts like an annual gala, um, but pays. like an insider company to inflate the fees for the catering, would be really bad. That would definitely give you IRS sanctions. So that's a good example of annual galas that, well, with inflated fees, I guess you could say. Um, and then let's see, the IRS for the IRS video certificate programs, they gave their example about like a donor having like an entire ticket d deducted, to ticket like a price, right? Um, but the nonprofit didn't subtract the meal value specifically, then that deduction is disallowed. So one thing to keep in mind there, especially about your dinner party or galas, and what was it? Not deductions. I'm gonna just say dinner party because I know it's a foundation for funding and um, like donating, donation days. Thank you. Gosh, whew, that was hard. But possible risk for raffles. Obviously, this goes into gaming. It has to just make sure that it's staying law compliant. Um, Obviously, that will lead to fines and illegal and being illegal. That's understandable. Obviously, UBIT can also go into that because if it's not volunteer run, then it classes with the mission, and then the IRS will see that. And then obviously proper record keeping. Definitely it needs to disclose to the IRS, and needs to be reported for the proceeds, expenses, and the prizes itself. Because then that would definitely jeopardize compliance if it's not recorded. Oof. Next, hiring a director. Well, I know that you have a director. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And that's completely fine. If the director's salary um, uh, exceeds, I mean, this would go into private inurement, right? And it'd be excessive compensation. So I would say if the director's salary just goes way too much over FMV or fair market value, then the IRS can definitely excise taxes and intermediate, I guess you could say, sanctions. It can also lead to a conflict of interest. Hiring family members or board members without transparent process can risk with self dealing, I guess you could say. So be aware about that. Also, I would be careful with employment law and obviously tax violations, like treating the director as like an independent contractor instead of an employee. Um, that would be that'd be bad. The misclassification of it. And then failure to document, lack of I guess you could say um, well, not writing it down. That's just record keeping at its finest. So Hopkins put a book about it. It says a nonprofit, uh, what was it? Daycare. It's a daycare. Hiring its, I guess you could say, founder's spouse. No go. Especially with inflated pay. You cannot do that whatsoever. And that just seems understandable. Private interment with um, the conflict of interest within hiring a director. It just shows in those possible risks. So overall, that dinner party, make sure it's disclosed and make sure there's no fair market value issues or inurement risk. Same thing with and raffles, go over UBIT, state law, and then overall just general IRS reporting, making sure you got everything down to the T with that record keeping. And then for the having a director. Making sure that compensation is fair, and then there's no conflict of interest or any worker misclassifications, then that's all that you really need to do to protect your tax exempt status. Um, Lastly, I am recommending a biannual meeting for you guys for the board of directors to stay informed on anything that's happening specifically in um, your foundation and your nonprofit so that um, you keep your tax exempt status, and then also um, just more heads that are together are better than just one. So that's incredibly important, and practically just means stay informed. I gave you the IRS stay exempt website. So that you can go over that. There's plenty of certificates that you can go through and watch through that gives a lot better of a explanation than I do. And then I just put my book down because it gets into the nitty gritty and specific um, uh, well, how to manage a nonprofit organization, the nitty gritty. So that's definitely important. I would definitely recommend that book. Obviously, the biannual meeting would just be informational meetings to stay tax exempt or to keep that tax exempt status. And what should you do in general during those? Really depends. You can go through. Get a speaker like me to come out and answer any questions for you all. And that's pretty much it. Um, I appreciate it. If you want another, I guess you could say presentation, uh, maybe about what you may call it. No, annulments, anything. It can go about private. I will find an answer for you guys. But yeah, here's my email. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And have a great day.